Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to join us on our webinar. Welcome. And today we will be presenting how to implement CC and increase adoption. Before I get started with the introductions, I wanted to share these awards that Condo Control won last year. The awards are Best Feature Set and Best Customer Support. Condo Control came in first among 78 other software companies in the property management industry. If you want to find out more, you can go to trustradius.com. My name is Gerard Salgado, and I am a Customer Success Manager here at Condo Control. I'm joined by my colleague, Greg Vieira, our Customer Success Team Lead. And I am very happy to introduce our very first guest speakers. Michael Trendota, the president from Alvington Communities, and Mark Sullivan, the board member at the Point at Siesta Key. And together we will be the speakers for this webinar. So now we are going to turn on our cameras. Perfect. Okay, so these are the speakers for today. Once again, I wanted to thank both Mark and Michael for taking the time to participate with us. First of all, I'd like to ask them to do a brief introduction for themselves. Let's start with Mark.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Sullivan, and I was asked by Gerard to participate today. I am part of a condo association in Central Florida, or the West Coast, Gulf Coast, called Siesta Key, and we've been implementing Condo Control for a little more than 2 years now. My background is I was a high-tech executive, software engineer and high-tech executive for many years, managed engineering and services, and retired, thankfully, early, many years ago. And my wife argues I didn't retire because I keep doing things like this, and also do a lot of tech support for a lot of nonprofits in my spare time.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Now let's pass it on to Michael.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Trendota. I am president at Alvington Communities. We are a condominium management firm operating in Ontario and Canada, and we operate throughout the province. In my spare time, I am a part of the Association of Condominium Managers. I typically volunteer on one or a couple of boards just to spread the word about condominium management in the province. And I also teach condominium management at Mohawk College. So if you're looking at hiring condominium managers in the future, there is a chance that I've actually been the one who teaches them. So I'm not saying you can blame everything on me, but I've definitely had a chance to teach them in the past.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. So yeah, for attendees, basically how this is going to run is the CSMs receive, a fair amount of questions. We have compilated, a lot of them, and we have chosen these to ask our panelists, which they have real life experience tackling the situation. So rather than have the CSM team do it, we thought it was way better if we could have people like Mark and Michael to answer them. Okay, first up, to give some context to our attendees, what was the situation before you had CC? Like, what were the problems you were tackling, and what made you think, okay, there has to be a better way to go around this? So let's start this time with Michael.
So some of the challenges that we faced before implementing Condo Control were a real lack of information. So in the condominium industry, we generate so many documents. There are tons and tons of documents that create documents, disclosures, financials. There are tons of documents. And owners didn't really have a useful and easy way of accessing all these documents. So we implemented Condo Control as a way of allowing owners to access what they want when they want. Doesn't matter if it's 3 a.m, 6 months later, or if it's a second after we release something, they have access to it. So it makes things much more self-service. And the other challenge I want to quickly go over is reporting and recording work orders. So when an owner requests something and they just send it to some random email in my company, it's hard to keep track of. It's hard to keep track of just all sorts of different information coming in. So what we do is if an owner sends us a work order, we actually ask them to upload it into Condo Control. And that way, the manager assigned to that property can actually deal with that work order directly. So it keeps things centralized, keeps things organized.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's move on to Mark.
So in our case, we had pretty much a perfect storm for people welcoming adoption of Condo Control Central. And it's not necessarily a way I'd recommend, but it makes things a lot easier to sell when you're trying to implement something new. And the situation we had was the prior condo management or owner communication software that we used had been an abysmal failure. I won't say who it was, but their service and support was horrendous. They would take months, literally months at a time, sometimes to respond to problems, lots of downtime. So our owners were very frustrated. The person who had been maintaining it on our side had recently left, and I stupidly walked into the situation and volunteered to take over. And so luckily the contract was within a month of being up. So I started doing research on other options we could take and settled on Condo Control based on a lot of the positives I found on the website, plus a lot of the things I saw that I had, features that it had that we needed and wanted. This may be somewhat jumping ahead about the dealing with the older demographics. The association I am part of is a 122 unit condo in Siesta Key, Florida, near Sarasota. And it's literally all older demographics. It's all retirees such as myself, and I'm on the younger end, most of whom are non-technical savvy. And so one of the first challenges they wanted me to do was to put together a phone book, because apparently every year when all the snowbirds arrived, everyone wanted to get a contact phone book to be able to contact their old neighbors and learn about the new neighbors and so forth. And I found that the data was all over the place. The person who had been doing it before did it with a spreadsheet that was not Excel and not industry standard. Another person had another list, a third person had it, and trying to reconcile them was a nightmare. Then formatting, printing, all of the above. So I looked for, first of all, I wanted to get everything centralized into a common database and ideally have the owners be able to maintain the information themselves rather than having 2 or 3 of us scrambling all the time to find out whose email and phone numbers and such. So again, Condo Control met the need, and after looking at it, we signed on for a contract.
Perfect. Thank you. So basically, the problems you were facing were lack of a single source of truth, data spread all over, very much of manual work involved. Okay, yeah, I think that's
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a common problem. But yeah, okay, thanks. So I'm sure many of our attendees have recently launched CC, and what would be the first steps, and what features would you suggest for them to start with that helped most on the implementation? We can start with Mark.
Well, the first thing that helped tremendously, in my view, was the support from your staff, Condo Control Central staff, just in the setup and behind the scenes preparation before we launched. And that really boiled down to, after all of the work we did that I mentioned about trying to get to one source of data, the fact that we were able to get it all onto a spreadsheet in a format that Condo Control provided to us, but get everything into a spreadsheet and have it imported so that all of the records were set up in advance, all of the data we needed, all of the ownership, the unit data was all set and ready to go on the launch day. And the fact that we were able to do a soft launch with just a few folks trying it before we announced it to everyone. So when it finally went live, quote unquote, it was a smooth implementation. People were gratified to see all the data there. So the upfront preparation was very well managed and well worth it.
Perfect. Thank you. So pass it on to Michael.
Yeah. What we found to work very well is, before launching it, really pre-populating with a lot of data. There's only one, I guess, guaranteed time that everyone's going to log in and look at it. And that's right when you're first launching it. Everyone's curious what it is. So by having the documents folders full and having lots of information there that they could access, by building out a frequently asked questions section. Now, it doesn't have to be 50 questions. You might get there eventually, but having at least the 5 or 10 most commonly asked questions. So if you have those built out, the first time the owners log on and they start looking around, they notice documents on there. They actually notice things that maybe they've never seen before, or things that they didn't know they could have access to. So that really helps with the adoption, just being able to have some documents on there. So that's the one I'll mention for now. We'll get into some more later.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. And to elaborate a bit more on that, so what Michael is referring to on the service requests, the Condo Control feature offers the functionality to add frequently asked questions, macros for pre-populated answers. You can even add a knowledge base and include articles. If you're wondering how to implement this, then please reach out to your customer success manager. So now,
just to expand that a little bit more on Michael's point as well as Mark's point, the sort of from my perspective, if I was a resident of any of the communities, I would ask the questions, what's in for me? I go in once and there's literally nothing there. I'll never come back, right? So it's like you want to sort of attract your audience with documents. You want to make sure that they can do self-serve stuff. You want to make sure that they have the ability to put requests, but you have to have a driver, right? Like if people are used to the paper and sort of they give a call to management and they're like, listen, I want to search the request. If you don't redirect them to do so for what you're trying to accomplish, the sort of adoption and increase will take a little bit longer, but maybe Mark and Michael can sort of comment on that sort of drive for success on that.
Yeah, that's something we found to be very useful. And the insight here is you can't run dual systems. You can't do it both in paper or maybe by email and through Condo Control, because then there's no incentive to change your previous method of doing it. So what you have to educate your team and educate your board members and your owners is that Condo Control is the new way of submitting a work order. So if someone sends you an email or someone catches you in the hallway saying, hey, I have this and this, you have to politely direct them to Condo Control and please file it there. And I always give it kind of the push, and that's how we can get to it the fastest, right? If you tell me, I might write it down, I might bring it into the office, right? It might get lost somewhere. But if you put it on Condo Control, it's logged on there. So yeah, manage only one system, train your team that everything runs through one system. And I even recommend to the team to build out sample replies. If an owner emails them and says, hey, I have a service request, they just paste in a sample reply that says something like this. Hi, thank you so much. Please file that through Condo Control. This is the best and easiest way of making sure it's addressed quickly. Here's a link, right? And we just have that standard answer that we give to anyone. As soon as they request something, just here you go. And it just pushes everyone onto Condo Control.
On the theme of having centralized data and self-service, one of the other features that we found helped immediately and does every day from then on was the library feature, being able to put the condo documents in one location that all the owners knew where they were. Because when you're in a condo, owners constantly have a need to access the bylaws. In Florida, we have flood insurance documents that need to be provided every time someone gets new insurance, wind mitigation because of the hurricane season and so forth. And it used to be that everyone had to walk down to the office, interrupt the office manager, get a paper copy and so forth. And especially difficult because a lot of the owners, again, are off-site or in other states much of the year. Having it all in one library that everyone knows where it is and they can go get it themselves just has been very helpful.
Perfect. Thank you both. Next question, and yeah, it's our top question, so you knew it was coming. It's how do you deal with the older non-tech savvy demographics? This time we'll start with Michael.
Awesome. So I believe it's a common misconception that older demographics don't use technology. In my experience, I've had 95-year-old long retired ladies who are able to use Condo Control. So it's not that difficult. We're not launching rockets into space. We're putting work orders in or asking questions online. So that's a common misconception. And in fact, the largest demographic of internet users, or the largest growing demographic, is that retired population who have never used computers before and are starting to use them now. So don't let that scare you. But there are some things you need to remember in terms of who are digital natives. A digital native grew up with computers. Using Condo Control is the easiest thing in the world for them, right? They just kind of get it. For older demographics, they haven't seen Condo Control. They haven't seen similar programs. So what I recommend is a very calm and practiced, patient approach. And a good way of doing this is just bring the owners into a big room and grab a projector or grab a large monitor and literally walk them through it, walk through the entire life cycle. Here's where you log in. You put your user and you put your password. Make sure you write those down. And then you take them into the front page and you say, if you want to access some documents, here's the library, right? And you walk them through and you're doing, let's call this an internal training session for your owners to show them how to use it. And make it acceptable to come to these multiple times and say, hey, we're going to cover some of the same material again in a week. If you want to see it again, come on down and you can bring donuts, you can have some coffee, and you actually have owners who they may have been afraid of using this before, but when you make it okay to ask questions, when you make it okay to not understand it right away, when you make it a fun experience, they will come and they will actually start using it.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
Michael, in a way, stole a lot of my thunder because he described exactly what we did. Again, multiple seminars. Pre-COVID, it was live and in person, which was much easier to do. We have a large function room that has a smart TV display that we could stream to and walk them through and show them how to do it. I'd also agree with the point that it's not necessarily the age about the demographic. It's I would argue a microcosm of general society. There's the technophobes, the technologists, and everyone else in between. And you just work with it. In our case, again, most of our management, other than 3 core full-time employees, is done by the owners and the board. And we have what we call a technology committee, which is a group of about 10 to a dozen of us who have technology backgrounds or are comfortable with technology. And we've publicized that the committee exists, and people know if you have a problem that you can't figure out and you need to call someone, you look up who's on there, and your buddy Joe, who's on the technology committee, hey Joe, can you come here and help me with this? And the other thing that I've found that has over the years, even when I was still working, that helps a lot is to convince people it's software, you can't break it. Now we all know that's not quite true, but for the most part, what I find is people, they're afraid to hit that button or afraid to explore because they're afraid they're going to break something. And you need to break through that phobia and no, try the library, because most of our owners anyway, I'm sure with most implementations are read-only setup, so they can't mess things up. Encourage them to experiment.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Gerard, we got a good question coming here from Colleen. I wonder if we can address that. She says that some of the owners are on Condo Control Central, some are not, and they have to use some hard copies. So what I recommend here is if you have this mixed system, it's never going to work because there's no reason for anyone to change their behavior. So stop doing the hard copies. So what I do instead is what I call like a one-page teaser. And I have a one-page document that says, there is new important information, in brackets this, that's now been posted to Condo Control Central. And I put it up on the notice boards. And I put it up and I slide that under the doors of those who don't have access to it. And it's a very good way of teasing someone. There is something important, but I'm not giving it to you right now. You have to log in to find it. And every time we do that, we get 1 or 2 of those holdouts where they didn't want it, but something clicks and they actually want this information today and they'll sign up for it. And you can make it easy by saying, here's the link to sign up, or come down to the office and we'll teach you. So yeah, definitely you have to stop doing the hard copies or no one's ever going to change.
And for what it's worth, I could probably give Gerard and Greg a real-time case study on this as we speak. One of the things that's really inhibited our rollout of Condo Control at our site and has made us not use anywhere near what I believe we can take advantage of in it, is we had a condo manager, our CSM, who actually was somewhat of a technophobe himself. And when owners would ask for that hard copy, despite being asked many times to point them to the library, he would give them the hard copy or deliver it to their door. So everything he was doing was somewhat counter to us trying to get Condo adopted. The good news is, we've changed managers within the last month, and I've already seen the new manager, who has very strong technology background, even without prompting from me, I tried to get the old manager to use the service request functionality many, many times. Never happened. The new manager within a week was already pretty much telling everybody, this is the only way you're going to get to us. So it'll be interesting to see how our implementation and our usage accelerates over the next 6 to 9 months.
Perfect. Thank you. So we'll run some more questions here. I have one from Barry. He says, we are relatively new, and have you run several training sessions? And he's hoping classified ads will attract users. So have you had any success with this?
Just to just give a little bit more background. So it's like that bulletin board that you have on your mailroom, and then you replace that to have electronically. So it's a way to maybe attract more users to sort of get rid of that board and then get them to use the technology that it's sort of do the same thing.
So this is an area that I've actually been giving feedback through Christine, my representative with Condo Control and in the support team. I would say that the classified ads and the discussion forum are two areas where you could make, I think, a relatively simple change that may increase adoption. We used to have people sticking pieces of paper up in our lobby all over the place to sell things. We wanted to get away from that. It's one of the reasons we went with the display. We have the TV displays in our lobbies that use the Condo function to display information.
Again, if you have any questions, you can use the QA functionality rather than the chat at the bottom of your screen. So
there's a question here from Willie that they have 50% of renters and owners are not giving information to tenants. And this is a challenge I definitely identify with, because I run some corporations that are 100% rented out. So essentially we have the owners and we have the residents. We've doubled the population. And here on Condo Control, you can actually add renters in. There are ways of adding them in where they still get that information. It requires a little more work because you have to have the email address of those renters. But I've typically found that, especially when you have longer term renters, when you have renters who are actually interested in that community life, you can get that information. And also a condo corporation has a duty to collect the information of renters anyways. So you should have a form that you send out to every new owner or to every renter that gets filled in. And that way you can actually add them into Condo Control and they get that information.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we'll continue with our questions. The next one, and on that topic, another question that CSMs get a lot is, how do we deal with outdated databases? So I guess, we'll start it with Mark.
I think it's consistent with some of the other earlier answers. Just you just need to focus and be dedicated to the fact that this is going to be your sole source of information. Again, I've been living it live, the frustration I mentioned earlier, but unless you get everyone to agree that this is going to be your primary database and that everything else will launch from there, you end up with multiple pieces of information in multiple locations and they're guaranteed to get out of sync. It's not a Condo Control issue or even a condo issue. It's a classic IT systems problem. Or even old paper. If you have it in two places, it's going to get out of sync. You just have to be dedicated to it. One of the things that I think Condo Control, like many systems, makes it easy to do is the fact that you can run reports and then extract them to Excel into other formats that allow you to still maintain it as your central information, but distribute it to others in other ways when they have a need to do that.
What we've typically done is, when a new owner announces themselves that they own this unit, we send them a form, once a pre-authorized debit form, so we can deduct their common element fees monthly. And the second form we send them is an owner information sheet. Who are you? What's your name? Etc. And we immediately send them a link to Condo Control to create their new profile. We exit the old user, the old owner, and we send them a link to create a new profile there. So adding it into that system. But another thing that we've done here is that we've actually passed some rules, and not necessarily bylaws, but more rules and policies in our corporations that say online is the only way that we transmit information, or you are required to use our online platform of choice for communication. And that way, when an owner comes to you and says, "Oh, I didn't get this," and we say, "Oh, you're unsubscribed from Condo Control Central. That's our primary tool of communicating with you. Please make sure that's there." Or they say, "We didn't get a message." We say, "What's your email?" We check if they have the right email. They say, "I changed my email." And we explain to them it's your responsibility to keep your email up to date. And once you've done that a few times in your community, it actually starts spreading a little bit to make sure so all owners know. It's like you can't unsubscribe from a US government or Canadian government letters. No, you can't unsubscribe from them. You must read them when they come to you. So same kind of thing is what we try to push for with Condo Control.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question is, any other blockers that you might have identified, or anything else that you want to make our attendees aware of? We'll start it with Michael.
Interesting. Any other blockers that we might be afraid of? Well, we've talked about technology. We've talked about demographics. Mark mentioned a staff member who was refusing to use it. These are all kind of the most common blockers that you might see. Another one we talked about was the owner versus renters. We talked about that a bit. I guess those are really kind of the major ones that you can expect. You have some smaller ones come up, but they might come in at the 2 or 3 user level as opposed to your entire community. I mean, we use Condo Control for some thousands of units now, and we always get kind of like the 1 or 2 off rare issue of someone who has a challenge with something. But yeah, those are kind of the main blockers, I think.
Okay, perfect.
The only other one that comes to mind for me is, and again, not unique to Condo Control or any particular application. And one of the challenges is the diversity of the devices that our owners are using to get to Condo Control. I primarily interact with it on a PC just because it's more functional and easier for me to do, although I use tablet and phone too. Then you get into the phone and you get the whole Android, iPhone differences, and it's a challenge because they'll ask a question. A lot of times I get hit with a question, especially honestly in the Apple space, that mystifies me because I'm primarily an Android Windows based user. But you get through those, and those are again not unique to Condo Control and in industry issues worldwide, but it is a bit of an inhibitor.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we'll take a few more questions from the Q&A functionality. Again, if you have questions, you can click on the Q&A functionality at the bottom of your screen. We have William who says, can CC host a forum for owners to chat, share, and learn without an agenda? Yes. So we have a discussion forums functionality, which you can control which groups form part of that forum. And again, we have found that this is sometimes better than a Facebook page, because a Facebook page is really not something you can moderate. You can moderate a discussion forum on CC, but again, Facebook pages usually just become a pool of negatives. So yeah, we do have a feature that can help you with that. We'll take another question here from Glenn. Glenn says that that they tried pushing CC. They have sent emails, mailers, but it's apathy abounds. So what else can be included as to help up those numbers for sign up?
The comment I'll add here is, what's your definition of success? So when I'm talking to board members, when we're thinking of launching Condo Control, it is impossible to get 100%. Now, I have many corporations at 100%, but for one reason or another, there may be owners who just refuse. No matter what, nothing can happen in the world and they'll never sign up. And that's okay. We can't force everyone to use it. And often these are owners who don't want any communication. They don't care that they don't get anything. They just don't want to talk to anyone. They want to hermit inside their units. And that's fine too. I've never had it as low as 50%. but I've definitely had a couple odd percent who just under no circumstances will they use it. One thing that Glenn here can consider is to make it more interesting. So, for example, if this is a marina, you can have some sort of events that you're announcing, and only announce it through Condo Control. Don't announce it any other way. So if you're not signed up for it, well, then you won't find out about this fun event. That's kind of one way you can do it. I'm thinking of incentivizing, I'm thinking of teasers, I'm thinking of these kind of things. And over time, you will get there. And just through natural turnover of owners, you'll eventually get owners who are willing to use the program, especially if you have them as part of your onboarding process and you just force them to log on to it. You can absolutely do that.
Yeah, what I would add, I'm looking at a lot of the comments and questions, and there's a somewhat central theme to it. And again, it's not unique, is you need to consistently provide new and interesting content. If we think about it, all of us individually, why do you go to certain websites? It's because there's new information, there's information of interest to you. It changes frequently enough to make you want to go back and check and see if there's anything new and interesting. And so part of the challenge, and it does help tremendously with adoption, is for the folks who are providing the content on your site to be able to do that and provide the content and make it lively and interesting. Easy to say, hard to do, but that really is, I think, over the years, I've found the unique answer, whether it's a forum site or a Facebook site, whatever. The other thing is, I hate to say it, but the 2 times in our history so far where we've had a surge in use in ownership, registration and logins was when we had crises or controversies. It's part of, again, they can be interesting, maybe not in the way you want them to be, but as an example that I've already mentioned, the recent change of our CSM created a lot of controversy because, of course, there were owners that loved the prior CSM and those that didn't. And so there was a lot of interest and debate and rumor and everything going on around, but it stimulated a whole bunch of people to join Condo Control who hadn't been there before.
What is that statement? Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next question from Willie. He asked, can an owner go under portal and a renter themselves? So yes, they can, Willie. There's just a permission you have to activate, and you can have an owner add tenants on their unit. Again, if you have any questions with this, you can always reach out to support or their customer success manager.
Yeah, and we as managers can change who gets the announcement. So we can have it go to only tenants, we can have it go to only owners. So for example, tenants might not need your annual budget, your owners do. But a fire drill, your tenants and your owners should know about both those things. So you have that ability to filter your announcements.
Yeah, perfect. Now, Anne asks, one of the blockers we have is language. Is CC consider implementing language translate function? So on that topic, we recently introduced the translation on the portal, on the resident portal for Spanish, French, and simplified Chinese. So if there's another language you're interested in, you can always let us know, Anne. Okay, so move on to another question from Emilio. We've been using CC for some time, and we have both unenthusiastic group of user residents and those less so. The later group uses email, especially when communicating with the property manager when it comes to a service request. So how do we encourage them to use CC for this purpose? I think our speakers have elaborated on this question. It's always direct them to the service requests. So always make Condo Control your single source of truth. Otherwise, you always have the 2 systems, which won't work.
One thing I found quite helpful, if you open up your Outlook and there are signatures options, I actually have entire emails saved as signatures. So of course I have my own Allington community signature there, but I also have a full other email written down, saved as a signature that says, thank you so much for the service request. Here's how you file it. Here's a link. And it actually takes me less than a second to answer this email when it comes down. I don't have to retype the whole thing. I just click my signature and there it is.
And just to comment, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to mention common service request. Like that's a feature. You can also include a superintendent within your building, whether they have like a smartphone or a computer. You can assign requests to them if it's not to be answered by management. And then they can use the app throughout the building. If there's Wi-Fi in different areas, they can have that sort of, going through different things that they need to do in the community, and then they can answer in real time within those users. They can put internal comments. They can also close those tickets, so you can have them involved rather than printing a sheet of paper, give it to them, they go knock the unit, or they go to that common area and fix the issue. Do everything into the service request, so you have a tracking not only for the corporation history but for the unit related history you can always go back to. Sorry, go on, Mark.
So there, again, two questions I've seen go by. One is, or a comment, which I would also agree with, is shamelessly take advantage of other family members. In many cases, you may have an owner who's got a son or a daughter or a grandchild who is very interested in technically savvy. Make them an owner or a user on the system and encourage them to help their parent or grandparent. Given being a Florida winter location, a lot of times families come down on spring break and you meet them at the pool, and as I said, shamelessly encourage them. Another comment or a question was about blocking out specific blocks on amenities. I don't know if you're aware, but you can do that. We did that a lot because of COVID restrictions. For example, we shut down some of the common areas. In other cases, gyms were only allowed to be blocked off by one person rather than used by multiple. And Condo Control does have a lot of that functionality on the amenity capability and setup that you can block off days, portions. We would block off ones when cleaning was scheduled so that they weren't being used, so the cleaning crew could get in there and sanitize and so forth. So it's there. It's just a matter of learning how to use it.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. To elaborate a bit more, you can block days so you don't have amenities. And also, as COVID restrictions start to ease off, then there we have a new functionality which allows you to have multiple bookings within a unit, within an amenity, sorry. So for example, you can have, if you want to cap your gym at 5 people, you don't no longer have to create 5 gyms on the amenities. You just have the one gym and you tell the system, I want to have 5 bookings in here.
I have a question here from Barry that I'm going to jump a couple forward and answer it. Yep. And the question here is the impression, he's getting the impression that the enthusiasm of the property manager is critical. Is correct. Very much this is correct, because your property manager is the one who ultimately drives this. It's not the board members, it's not the owners, the property managers in the driver's seat. So fortunately, it's not hard to convince a property manager that this is actually a good program. Usually when you tell them, all your service requests are coming to one spot and you don't have to answer half your questions because they're already on the frequently asked questions document and you can just refer them to, that immediately gets most property managers very, very interested in the product. When you explain to them that you don't have to be walking around and hand delivering notices anymore, you can just type it up in 10 minutes and send it out to everyone and save yourself a couple hours of wandering the neighborhood. These things get adoption very, very quickly, especially when you can when you just tell them to your property manager. And more often than not, this is actually the property manager who's driving these adoption, not the board. The property manager is going and introducing the board. Here is a great software product that reduces your costs, makes your staff more efficient, makes your owners more engaged. Are you interested? And this is often when the board members say, yes, tell me more. And this is when you connect them with Greg and Gerard to give them some more information and send them some webinars, sign them up for things.
Another question that I'm seeing on the site is one that frustrated me early on. And that was wanting to get a report to be able to see who had not signed up yet. I could get a report on the logins and so forth, but I couldn't get a report on, all right, so we have 122 units. How many have never logged in, or how many have not used Condo Control Central yet? Correct me if I'm wrong, Gerard, but I believe there's now a report to do that. I haven't looked at it recently, but that was the way I eventually was able to do that and take a look every once in a while who's on and who isn't.
That's right, Mark. There is a report that tells you the registration of users and another one for user login. So those 2 reports, you can find them in the reports feature on CC. Again, any questions, you can always reach out to support or your customer success manager. Okay, we'll move on. So we have a question here from Jeffrey. He says, we are a large association in Southern Florida. So, any thoughts on how to communicate with the community having a large percentage of people without technology? So Yeah, we might need a little bit clarification on without technology. I mean, in our experience, we usually find that that even though older demographics, they do have a tablet or a smartphone.
Well, there's some unique features about Florida that if you give me a minute or two to go through, Gerard. I think I know what he's talking about. So are many notifications you need to make from a condo, any condo anywhere, legally, and in many cases you have to send those hard copy. Or if we just went through a frustrating process where we wanted to take advantage of the electronic consent capability on Condo Control Central, where a unit owner can go in and say, I consent to receiving all future mailings or the majority of future mailings electronically rather than by hard copy paper. Believe it or not, it's very frustrating, but believe it or not, we found out Florida actually has a condo law in place that the original electronic consent has to be done by hard copy. Now, what kind of an oxymoron is that? But
yeah,
our owners need to opt in by a hard copy paper, and you then have to manage these hard copy papers to make sure that somebody hasn't rescinded it or a new one comes in and so forth. But we're going to do that because after that, you can send all of your condo documents, your annual meeting, your financial reports, your monthly minutes, all of that you can send via technology. I don't have a magic answer for Jeffrey's part of the, their audience doesn't have any technology. It's in this day and age, what we found, again, with what we found is 122 units, there's maybe a dozen owners who are in that category. The rest most of them have smartphones. It's unusual. Even the biggest technology phobe at this point has a smartphone and knows how to minimally use it. And if you get 80 or 90% of them that way, and you can save the mailing costs on 80 or 90%, great, and you just have to do paper for the rest of them.
So Jeff says, how successful are you in getting the PM to do it all versus only maybe 50% and the board 50%?
I think I can answer that one. And I find this to be very much community specific. We have some corporations where they're entirely investor owned and the manager wants this to keep everyone up to date, and they're going to do this all themselves. And it's not that hard. They'll do this all themselves. But then we have the exact opposite, where they're 100% owner occupied, no renters at all. And these board members typically want to be part of it. They say, you know what, frequently asked questions, give that to me, I'll take it on. Or they're kind of involved, they're fishing around and they're digging to see which documents, they're making sure the documents are all named properly. So it really depends on your community. And so if you're a manager who has one experience in one, you might have a different experience in another community. And we've found that out because we actually have communities on both ends of that spectrum. So it changes a bit.
And in my case, as I've already mentioned, talk to me in a few months, but I'm already seeing the difference between the prior manager and the current one in adoption and use. And it's like night and day. And it's especially interesting given that this is our quiet season. 90% of our residents, myself as an example, are no longer on site and won't be again until late fall or maybe even January when everything spikes up again. But even with that, seeing a much greater adoption and usage because the manager is behind it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mark. So we're on the final questions. Jeff asked, have you used the survey feature? And if so, for what? So the survey, its purpose is to get the opinion of your community on a certain topic. It's basically creating questions and you send them via email and your residents will answer that question.
Yeah, I've used this feature and we kind of go through a problem that we often have. The board is afraid to spend money on something because they think that my only responsibility here is to keep fees low. And that's actually not true. Imagine if you have 99% of owners who want something done in that community, right? Then it's entirely okay to raise fees to pay for that kind of thing. So security is an example of them. Owners want more security. Well, the board's responsibility here is not to keep fees low and have no security. It's to introduce security. So we use the survey feature as a way of polling the owners and find out what percentage of you want something. And then that information, when the board has it, it's a license to spend money on something that's actually required. So you have 95% of owners who want security. You should probably get more security. You now have permission to spend money on that. Another one is electric vehicle chargers. Who wants them, right? How many owners would want them? And this is often a chicken and egg problem. Nobody wants to buy an electric vehicle until there are chargers, but nobody wants to put a charger in because nobody has electric vehicles. If you poll your owners and find out how many of you would like to have a charger put in, then you can actually put one and you have a bunch of owners who buy electric vehicles for it. So there are lots of different uses for that feature.
Perfect. And then Brent asked, in regards to interesting content, what would you do around video content? So just a reminder, the platform does have a size limit for files. So in this case, is what we suggest is to add a link on CC. Add a link. You can upload those big videos on a cloud software such as Dropbox, and you can put that link in CC, and it'll guide your users there. And I think we got through the questions. Again, thank you. Very, very good questions here. Just wanted to remind you that CC does put an effort in creating user guides, videos on our YouTube channel, training modules on the platform. So, we work hard in order to have that self-serve for your residents and for PMs as well. So if you want to know more about them, you can always reach out to your customer success manager. He will be glad to show you all of the resources.
The comment I'll add is that Condo Control Central and online communication is the way of the future. This is not something that if we jump forward 10 years from now, we find that everything's back to paper. That's not the direction this is going. This is going to entirely online, especially as there's more and more regulation in Florida and Canada and the States. As there's more and more regulation and more reasons you might have to prove that you submitted a document, or prove that it was posted for a minimum amount of time, or prove that everyone has access to something. You're going to see more and more the power of these types of platforms, and this one specifically, expand over time. So this is not going away. And if you're building a career in this industry, using Condo Control is something that I highly recommend you learn how to do.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for all the attendees for taking time out of your day. Thank you to Michael and to Mark for participating. And I would just wish you a very happy Wednesday afternoon.
Okay, thanks everybody. Appreciate the
Thank you,
time.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.